Alright, welcome back to the garage. Today we are working on the white e36 and the goal is to get the wire harness installed and start it. That would be ideal. So let me show you what we have to do to achieve that. Okay, so this is the engine that was originally in the car, and as I mentioned in the first video, we have to swap wiring harnesses because the engine we put in came out of an e34, so we need to put this e36 harness on there. And basically how I'm going to do it is start from the bottom and work my way up. I have to put all the metal bracketry on first, and then we lay the harness in along with some coolant pipes, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not as complicated as it might seem. You just keep plugging away and eventually you run out of connectors. So let's get started. Alright, so here's what the block looks like with none of the bracketry that holds up the wiring harness, and you'll see it comes together pretty quick. Alright, got all the brackets in, looking pretty good, and I took off this steering coupler here. I wanted to get to it before we got it too buried, but it's pretty easy to get off from underneath, so we can keep moving there. I'm going to replace this flex disc. It's got a big chunk missing and it's all dry rotted and soft, so we'll slap a new one onto those. We've got a new fuel filter to put in, and then we can start laying on the harness. For the fuel filter here, it's supposed to have this rubber ring that goes around it to secure it in the clamp so it's not sitting there rattling around and hanging, but this one is half missing. I don't have a new one, but what I did find is a coupler here. This is a 3-inch to 2.75 inch, but yeah, if you have a 3-inch coupler laying around, that fits perfect on the fuel filter. Go ahead and sacrifice this, cut a section off, and then we'll have a nice new, what do you call this, O-ring to clamp down in our mounting bracket so this thing's not rattling around, because you wouldn't want that. Maybe it would wear a hole through, not good. Perfect. Super easy. Quick tip here before I put this dipstick in, check this O-ring out. Make sure it's in good shape. I had an oil leak I couldn't find once. It was because this ring had split, and it would only leak when I was driving and the oil sloshed around, so I was scratching my head for a while, but I figured it out. So if you have an oil leak like that, check this O-ring. Leave that a little loose for now. Oh yeah. Just gotta find the other bolt. Where is my bolt? I need my bolt. Ew. Wonder what these are for. Where do you go? That looks pretty good. Oh, it's a shorty. Shorty it is. Super easy. Alright, before I put this wire harness in, I want to take a quick second and explain how you can know where the plugs underneath the intake go. Now, the best way to remember is to label them, but if you didn't have that option or you forgot to, I'm going to show you how you can figure it out pretty quick. So there's 4 3-prong plugs under the intake, and there's 4 2-prong plugs under the intake. So if we start with the 3-prong plugs, the longest one goes to the throttle position sensor, so up under the intake and wraps around to the throttle body. And now we're left with 3, so if you look, 2 have thinner insulation and 1 has thicker insulation. So the one with thicker insulation goes to the idle control valve, just wraps around and plugs in right there. And now we're left with 2, so you'll see one's longer than the other. These are our crank and cam sensors, so the longer one is the crank and the shorter one's the cam, and they slide into that bracket that faces down right there, so that's why one's longer than the other. So lower crank, upper cam. That has our 3-prong plug sorted. Alright, on to the 4 2-prong connectors here. I'll start with the 2 short ones. These are your coolant temp sensor plugs. So the blue one plugs into the blue sensor on the head and the black one plugs into the black sensor on the head. The blue one sends information to the DME, the black one sends information to your gauge. Alright, that leaves us with the 2 long ones. These are really simple. If you look down at the connector, you'll see one has a singular contact. That's for your oil pressure switch on the back of the oil filter housing. And the other one is your intake air temp sensor, so that's going to come up under the intake and plug in there. Alright, there you have it. Hopefully that saves you some time and stress trying to figure out where all this goes. Time to put it in. Alright, so we have the harness most of the way installed. I've got all the major power and grounds hooked up, and we've got our routing down pretty good. I went ahead and put in this center coolant pipe because I wanted to see if I was going to route these wires over or under it, but decided on over, and I think they'll tuck in there nicely. Good, it all zip tied up looking tidy. But what I'd like to do now is test the starter. So I think we have enough to turn the engine over. I went ahead and pulled the fuel pump fuse just in case, but I don't think it would prime with the DME not plugged in. But we're going to turn over the engine and just see what happens. Got cabin lights, that's good. Dash lights up, that's good. No clicky to the starter. have to figure that out. Alright, forgot the engine ground, so just got that hooked up. We're gonna try again. Success! He freaking turns over. That's awesome. Alright. That's cool. Alright, so now that I know that the starter is working, I felt comfortable moving forward with permanently fixing the wire harness, so got that all zip tied in, looking good, along with this coolant pipe is fixed in place. Nice and tidy. So next thing I'm going to work on is installing the cam and crank sensor, which we have a new one here, and the fuel lines that go under the intake. So that is what we're doing next. Alright, I've got the cam and crank sensors in, and the fuel hoses are all installed and clamped down all the way up to here. So next step is putting new gaskets in the intake manifold, and then we can drop that on. Alright, so I've got the intake on and everything that attaches to it. We've got the DME plugged in, we've got the fuel rail hooked up, we've got the main relays in, we've got oil in the engine, batteries hooked up. Pretty sure we're ready to start it. There's no exhaust on it, so it's going to be pretty loud, but let's see what happens. First start time. Let's see what we get. No fuel pump rod, not good. That was exciting. Super stoked that this thing runs. That is a big success. That means that we put a good engine in it and we've done everything correctly up to this point. So, big win. Now we can start buttoning things up because I'm confident that it's going to work. So we can put coolant in, radiator in, hook up the exhaust, etc. So yeah, big success. Engine runs. We're getting close. We're very close. All right, I will see you in the next one. Bye.